Why baby boomers never talk about their feelings. They were raised by parents who had survived a war. Not metaphorically. Literally. Rationing, loss, and silence were the normal backdrop of their childhood. Think about what that teaches a person. When your own parents rarely spoke about hardship, you learn, early, that feelings are something you carry, not something you share. Baby boomers grew up in homes where the message was simple. Be tough. Don't complain. Get on with it. It wasn't cruelty. It was survival, passed down as parenting. Have you ever met someone who seems almost allergic to admitting they're struggling? That's not coldness. That's a lifetime of training. Boomers were taught that emotional expression was, at best, unnecessary. And at worst, a weakness that could cost you respect. So they learned to internalize almost everything. Grief. Stress. Disappointment. All of it, quietly folded away and never discussed at the dinner table. Here's something remarkable about that generation. Despite carrying all of that silently, they built an extraordinary amount. Careers from nothing. Homes from nothing. Stability, for their own children, that they themselves never fully had growing up. Work became their language for love. Providing was how they said, "I care about you," when the words themselves felt too vulnerable to say out loud. Think about that for a moment. An entire generation expressing devotion through discipline, not conversation. Of course, this came with a real cost. Because when you spend an entire life not naming your emotions, you eventually lose the vocabulary for them. Many boomers reached their 50s and 60s without ever having had a single real conversation about what they actually felt. Not because they didn't feel deeply. Because no one ever taught them how to say it out loud. Have you ever noticed how some older men, especially, seem to only express anger? Not because anger is the only thing they feel. Because anger was the one emotion society allowed them to show. Everything else got buried underneath it. That's not who they are. That's what they were permitted to become. There's something else worth understanding here. Many boomer women carried a different, quieter version of the same silence. Taught to be endlessly capable, endlessly composed, rarely asking anything for themselves. Holding families together while quietly setting their own needs aside for decades. That kind of invisible labor rarely got acknowledged, let alone discussed. And it wasn't just at home. In the workplace, many boomer women had to prove themselves twice as hard, in rooms that rarely made space for them. They learned to be composed under pressure long before anyone called it emotional labor. That composure often got mistaken for ease. It rarely was. There's something else people rarely talk about. Boomers built entire lives around self-reliance. But self-reliance, taken far enough, quietly turns into isolation. Many of them struggle to ask for help even now. Not because they don't need it. Because needing help was never modeled to them as acceptable. Think about the paradox in that. The generation that built modern stability often has the hardest time admitting when they're struggling inside it. Of course, this isn't the whole story either. Because underneath all that silence, something quietly powerful exists. An incredible capacity for endurance. For showing up, day after day, without needing recognition for it. For loving people through actions, even when the words never came easily. Have you ever watched an older relative fix something without being asked? Show up early, stay late, never mention it? That's not indifference. That's a lifetime of learning that love looks like effort, not conversation. Maybe that's the real story here. Baby boomers didn't fail to feel. They were simply never given permission to say it. And now, later in life, many of them are quietly learning something new. That strength and vulnerability were never opposites. That asking for help doesn't undo a lifetime of self-reliance. That silence was never really strength. It was just the only language anyone ever taught them. And maybe, understanding that